So one of the tried and true techniques over the years is a spinnerbait. As of this year, I actually kind of started custom making. I made one of my own spinnerbaits that I've kind of like. I like throwing it. Sometimes that thumper is really, really good in certain situations, but I've kind of made like a different spinnerbait that I like to throw kind of in the same situations and kind of talk about that, but it's a little more finessey. It'll get more bites than that big thumper. Sometimes that thing's intimidating. And this is it right here. You can see I have caught so many fish on this bait this year. And what this was actually a 1/2 ounce greenfish tackle single Colorado that was a thumper spinnerbait. And what I did is I wanted a smaller profile spinnerbait with these double Colorados. So I cut that thumper blade off and I cut up an old 1/4 ounce spinnerbait I have. And I took these smaller double Colorado blades. I don't know exactly what size these are, but you can see compared to my hand, these are little small double Colorado blades. This is an Indiana on the end, but double Colorados work the same. Just these small little double Colorados. But what's unique is, so when I've bought spinner baits, I always like those finesse style spinner baits. Sabine River where we always go for bass, and some of those lakes like that where the fish aren't really big, but they stay around shallow cover. Spinnerbait's really good, but like when you get a 1/4 ounce and a 3/8 ounce spinnerbait, this is what I would call a 1/4 ounce spinnerbait size bait. When you get these small finesse spinnerbaits that you can buy online, there are a bunch of companies make them. That to me, that small spinnerbait with this size blades, they don't flutter well. So what I mean by that is you throw that 1/4 ounce, you reel it, looks fine reeling it, kind of wants to rise some, but when you get over a piece of wood, over a dock, over whatever, and you do that kind of stop and flutter, whereas when you get a lot of your bites on a spinnerbait, those light, even up to 3/8 ounce, they just kind of do nothing. What happens is the bait's coming along, and when you go to flutter it, it just kind of balls up just like this and the blades fall. Well, when you go up to a 1/2 ounce, so what I've been doing is literally taking my blades off my 1/4 ounces and putting them on a 1/2 ounce. When you flutter this bait, it actually falls straight head down and the blades still kick a little bit. So what that does is just gets a lot more bites. It looks more natural. That balling up and falling just doesn't work well. So I recommend trying it. I don't, some companies might make them. It's just something I've been doing and making them all year. And I've been taking the 1/2 ounce and taking 1/4 ounce size blades, just basically small Colorados. I'm not saying a specific size because it's really not one. You just, if you want to flutter, fall faster, put smaller. If you want to, fall a little slower, you want to go bigger. But the problem is you go too big, it's going to do that ball up thing. You're getting that same ratio of that 1/4 ounce or 3/8 to this. So I've really started throwing this 1/2 ounce. And when I'm fishing this bait, it's okay for just running down the bank, but that's not really how I'm throwing it. I'm using it just like I do that big thumper spinnerbait, pitching it tight around cover, almost fishing it like a jig, not speed-wise, but like getting tight to a dock, tight to a laydown or whatever, and pitching in every crevice. And I'll reel it by a limb and flutter it over it, reel it by a dock pole and flutter it down it. And this smaller bait flutters really, really well and gets a lot of bites. I've caught fish in the muddiest water you've ever seen in it. The Sabine River was super muddy. I've caught fish in, Lake Greenwood around here, just in, average dirty water. Obviously a spinnerbait's better in some type of dirty water. But even with these little double Colorados, I think they're small enough to where even in semi-dirty to relatively stained water, it still will get bit versus that thumper. That thumper I don't do really well unless it's very, very dirty. That 3/4 ounce thumper spinnerbait, you can go back and watch that video if you didn't watch it before, and it lists a bunch of the same details about how I throw this bait. But it's basically just a more finesse version of that, a lot smaller. It's hard to, I've tried it with just the single Colorado on this smaller bait, and it works okay, but I feel like it planes a lot better with the double small Colorado or double small Indiana blades. Just a little finesse spinnerbait, gets a lot of bites, but doesn't have that super light weight that the other ones do. What I've been doing with this bait is actually something else just came up with this year that I've been doing, is actually use a Z-Crawl Junior as the trailer. But I do something a little weird with this. So this is something that it will increase your production or how many baits you use in your, or decrease it, I guess you'd say. But I've been doing this all year with this spinnerbait, some other spinnerbaits too, but especially a super finesse spinnerbait. So I take a Z-Crawl Junior. I got green pumpkin here just so you can see the contrast. Take me a pair of scissors, and I take this Z-Crawl, kind of hard to do, but you want to cut it right down the middle, long ways. This is something I've been doing all year for spinner baits, especially these finesse spinner baits. Looks kind of ridiculous, but, so I cut it right down the middle. And what that did is I came up with 2 baits now. So I've got 2 spinnerbait trailers out of 1 Z-Crawl Junior. And when you put it on these spinner baits, thread it on the same way, it's very thin, but it does what you need to for a spinnerbait. It's more just a kicking action, a little plastic for them to hold on to. So thread that on, and it is the perfect little spinnerbait trailer. It's a pretty cool trailer. I've been using it. This is green pumpkin. Obviously I wouldn't put a green pumpkin on a white spinnerbait, but I just did it so you can see the contrast. But you can get 2 baits out of 1 trailer, and it's one of the best trailers I've found for especially this small profile, little bitty spinnerbait that I've been throwing around all year. And probably caught more fish on this spinnerbait this year than any other spinnerbait. It's something I'm gonna throw all winter. It's just a perfect tight to cover spinnerbait to throw around. When it comes to throwing that though, you know, I throw bigger spinnerbaits a lot, like 1/2 ounce or bigger, I throw on my buzz burner rod. But with this little spinnerbait, it's even though it is 1/2 ounce, it's really small profile, not very heavy, small blade, small everything. So I actually been using my little skipper rod. So this rod, I designed it for, you know, little finesse jigs, things like that. And I was like, I'm gonna try it for a spinnerbait. It's got a little more tip probably than I would prefer, but I can cast it really well, which is the most important thing with that spinnerbait, is putting it where you want, getting it under things, you know, tight to the cover. And with that little spinnerbait, it casts really good on this little skipper. It's a 610 medium heavy, but it's got some tip to it. So it's a good rod for that, designed for a finesse jig, but really good for those like small compact spinnerbaits. Gravity reel, and that spinnerbait, you can throw it on 20. If I got a reel spooled up with 20, I'll go with 20-pound test, fluorocarbon, but generally I throw that smaller bait on 16. Because it's a lighter bait, you don't want to change that action much with the small profile. You go up to 20, I don't feel like it flutters, that flutter action I was talking about, which is the most important part to any spinnerbait fishing. Don't think it flutters quite as going 20, so I go to 16-pound test, and I think it gets a few more bites. But blade combination, you definitely got to try this. Everybody's got a million spinnerbaits in their boat, and if you're like me, you got so many spinnerbaits in the boat, but you always go to tie one on, and you're like, man, I just don't feel like this is exactly what I want. So I started just cutting them up, and this has became one of my staples that probably gonna have to start getting made and order. But you can take any of your 1/2 ounce spinnerbaits, take your small Colorado's, Indiana blades off those finesse spinnerbaits, and get rid of those 1/4 ounce. Because in my opinion, the little 1/4 ounce, they don't do what they need to, but the blades are good. So take that and put it on your 1/2 ounce. I've tried a 3/4. 3/4 is a little excessive, but 1/2 ounce, little blades, little finesse spinnerbait, get you bites when nothing else will. So on my little finesse spinnerbait setup here, colors, I feel like spinnerbait colors are pretty generic, I guess. You'd say, you know, you got your, generally what I'm gonna throw is white, chartreuse and white, or chartreuse. That's pretty much the only color spinnerbaits I'm gonna go with. And when it comes to that, so when cutting up the Z-Crawl Junior to make the dual trailers, as I said, white pearl is kind of my starting point. I'm gonna put it on any of them. Sometimes I want a little contrast though. If I want that tail to kind of stand out from the body a little bit, I'll keep one little bag of chartreuse pearl trailers that I've already cut up, because I don't use the chartreuse pearl Z-Crawl Junior as much, or you could dip this in some dye if you got it. But I'll use pretty much a white pearl or a chartreuse pearl trailer. And sometimes that chartreuse pearl, I've actually had really good success with that chartreuse pearl on a straight white spinnerbait. It just stands out, gives it a little contrast without the skirt being chartreuse. So it's pretty cool. This is the chartreuse pearl. I don't have a Z-Crawl Junior out, but so you add that chartreuse. This is a fluke, but add a chartreuse little accent to those white spinnerbaits, and it'll get a few more bites sometime. But the gold blade, the blade setup, gold. I generally throw, in a Colorado Indiana style, I generally throw my largest blade, which is this one, as gold. This one, I just had a gold small blade too, because I was in some real dirty water, but sometimes it's not quite as dirty. I'll go to that silver small blade and a gold large blade. But usually if I'm throwing a Colorado Indiana style spinnerbait, the water is at least dirty enough to go with this gold blade. Gold just tends to work better for me anyway in muddier water. That's kind of my color blade setup. I wish I knew the exact size of these. I don't know, but they're the same thing that generally come on a 1/4 ounce Colorado blade spinnerbait. Just add it to your 1/2.